Hi, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 73. I'm talking with Solomon Blair and Paul Gaboury from Pixologic. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay Podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Hey, this is Allan. So just a quick thing to check out, www.vfxrates.com. This is a website that I created to solve a massive problem that we all have. What should we be charging? This is one of the giant mysteries that we all have and most people feel very uncomfortable talking about is what we should charge as a freelance rate. And the worst part is when we go to apply for a job, if we ask too much, we risk alienating the employer and never getting that call back. Whereas if we play it safe and ask too little, we not only get taken advantage of, but on top of that, we leave a lot of money on the table, which potentially over the span of a year can lead up to tens of thousands of dollars. So this is a chance for you to quickly go to the website, vfxrates.com, put in a few basic bits of information based on your city, your experience, your discipline, software, little factors that are very important to figuring out what you should be charging as your base rate when you're going to an employer. Now, this is based on a lot of research, but more importantly, it's based on a brain trust of industry experts from different fields that we've all pulled together and being able to maintain this as a very accurate way to generate what you should be charging. The best part is not only what you should be charging, but also potentially what you could be charging by tweaking a few things to how you present yourself, building your brand, learning to negotiate better. Also, other factors like building an irresistible reel, learning to approach employers the correct way, learning to network, a lot of other factors. I want to share all this information for free. Go to www.vfxrates.com and find out what you should be charging for your hourly VFX rate. All right, so I'm really excited to introduce this episode. This is with Pixologic, who are the developers of ZBrush. And I think this is going to be a really fun episode because we talk about so much stuff, and it's really great to talk with a crazy bunch of guys and really get into a lot of the diversity we have within the industry, like a lot of really great core knowledge and just a lot of the history that we get into. We definitely touch on a lot of cool stuff. At the same time, it was really cool just to talk about ZBrush and about the amazing community, as well as the new platform. They've just launched ZBrush Live and some of the really cool stuff they're doing there. So all in all, this has been a really, really fun episode to discuss. So just a heads up, it's a couple of weeks away till the It's Art Masterclass event in Paris, which will be from May 16 to May 18, I believe. And I'm really excited about that. This is a chance to hang out with many amazing speakers from Ash Thorpe, Dan Rorty, Neil Blevins. I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Ryan Church, Nathan Fowler, Andrew Schmidt. There's so many really cool, really talented speakers who are attending. I'll be there as well. I'm helping host this year's event, which will be really cool. And what I love about this event is it's so social. Everyone really gets to hang out, from the attendees and the speakers. We're all together, getting drunk, getting full on great food, and just having a great time. So typically, I always hold a little gathering mixer for all my students in the mentorship, as well as the live action series each year as well. So I'm looking forward to getting to hang out with everyone there too. If you are in Europe or interested in coming along, check out iamag.co, so iamag, so it's artmagazine.co, and I'll put a link in the show notes as well. I just figured I'd mention it because I'm excited about it, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I said a lot of fun. I feel like I'm Italian. So a lot of fun going to this event, so it's going to be really cool. I've also gotten a lot of inquiries about the FXTD mentorship, when that's going to be opening up doors again, because we open it only once per year, and it's been just a little bit over a year already. So come April, we'll be opening up registration for that, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, it's going to be really cool. So I will definitely mention some information about that leading up to it. But that all being said, I wanted to get right into this episode pretty quickly. So without further ado, let's talk with the guys from Pixologic Sol Blair, and Paul Gaboury.
So thanks for having us, by the way, Allan. So this is Paul Gaboury with Pixologic. I've been with the company now for going on 8 years. I've been using ZBrush, though, for 12, 13 years. And I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, and Jurassic Park, Terminator 2 changed my life. Made me go from just drawing every day to going, what is this CG thing? Mm-hmm. And led me to this path, getting into things like Maya and Photoshop, and then eventually stumbling upon ZBrush myself and teaching it to myself. So being I'm the head of 3D production here. So I'm a member of the development team. And I go in and out of a lot of either be studios or pipelines and help them build the pipeline, change it, see what they're doing with the application, to give support to the application as well. So if people have questions about how certain things are working, I'll help with that as well. And I am an artist, so I use the application myself artistically, building whatever I feel like building. I got a couple 3D printers at home. I'm obsessed with 3D printing for sure. Building some. It's so funny to see my daughter. I printed her a piggy bank, and now she like points at it. And,
I forgot about that. Thing was sweet.
And so it's funny to see that she actually got it off my desk when I was doing a 3D print, and it was drying, and she went and pulled it off my desk, and she's like brought it up to me and gave it to me. I'm like, thanks.
Here you go, Dad.
Awesome.
Here's your pig that you made.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool if you had your daughter's fingerprints and everything in there, though, from like holding it or something, and you're going to give it a normal character.
Yeah. Right. Well, luckily, because there's chemicals, right? There's alcohol, right? But I didn't think she'd be able to reach it because she's only one. Mm-hmm. She's only 15 months. I don't even know. Till this minute, I don't know how they actually got her hands on it, but it was already like completely dry. So for those out there, I'm a good dad. Okay.
She wasn't in any danger.
Wasn't in any danger. So, but it's a form too. So it's just rubbing alcohol. But it's stuff like that. I love going back. It's weird now. I love the fact that we're digital. I find myself actually going back to the tactile part of back in the day when we were probably kids building models, and I'm digitally making something, but now I want to physically print it out and like paint it or scrape it up and glue it and put things together. So for me right now, that's kind of an interesting thing. And one of my first major projects here, actually, at Pixologic, was the Decimation Master and 3D print exporter, which is all really wrapped around 3D printing. And that was 8 years ago. So
you were pushing it at the beginning.
We've been in it for a long time.
Yep.
It's not anything new to us here. And then for me specifically, and in fact, I actually helped Legacy Effects purchase their first printer.
That's
their
so cool.
3D printer.
Who's the guy over
Jason
there?
Lopes,
Jason Lopes.
Scott Patton. Ian Joyner was just about to start there. He wasn't there yet.
Right.
So
I got plenty of stories about Ian.
Yeah.
I'll save them.
Yeah, Ian was actually one of the first artists of the ZBrush community I hung out with too.
Oh, really?
We were at a conference together, and him and I were just chilling in the back, waiting for our times to go and speak, and we were just hanging out, talking a lot. And he was one of the first artists that. So it was a good friend of mine. He ironically, he lives like literally 10 minutes. We live like 10 minutes apart from each other, if that. But Saul's with us. Saul, introduce yourself.
Oh man, I got to do that. Okay. Solomon, or I go by Saul. We better call Saul. It's the easiest reference. I've been with Pixologic for 6-7 years now. I was actually one of Paul's former students, which we actually talked about a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of transitioned a lot through the company as far as my responsibilities. When I first came on, and I told the story of, when I was a student, my demo reel, all my stuff got ripped off, and I never got it back. So I started over. So I spent a good year after school doing freelance. I took anything I can get because I had a general knowledge of compositing, motion graphics, animation, modeling, but ZBrush is always the thing that was my focus. But, when you're young and you're trying to, make ends meet and you got to pay the bills, you just kind of take whatever you can get. And while I was kind of building back up my ZBrush reel, and then Paul offered me a job here at Pixologic, and I kind of have been here ever since. And I came in doing I was kind of helping them to start to help dealing with marketing, promotion, advertising, doing a lot of motion graphics, shooting a lot of video, And at the time, ZBrush Pixologic wasn't doing as much. We still had Z Classroom. There's online education that was free. But around the time when I started here, Paul had been going out to the LA circuit and going to, there's tons of expos here. Allan, it's like you've got Matchapalooza, CTN, Designer Con, all these great things that happen every year, SIGGRAPH. And Paul was kind of the pioneer, really, to start pushing ZBrush and being physically in those places, because it's such a unique thing. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world, where you have such a large pot of artists, this melting pot of all these people. So it's a very unique experience. And so when I came on, I started doing a lot of documenting these things. We'd bring all these amazing professional artists that were doing presentations. So we started shooting it and creating new educational content. And that was, a lot of my responsibilities, as well as I helped rebuild Z Classroom, the page, and doing a lot of education, tutorial videos, recordings, that kind of stuff. And since then, I've kind of what I always wanted to do, which is where I've finally been able to transition into working more into development and just being an artist, and helping Paul and some of our other team members help to, shape the features and test and work and, all the things that go into development before we get to actual beta testing with professional artists. But, we're basically full-time artists. We have to be deep thinkers, and we have to consider all walks of life and all users at different experience levels. And we have to kind of analyze those things and help to kind of innovate the tools and the places that they need them. And, that's a lot of what we do now. But another thing that we're doing right now is we just launched something called ZBrush Live. So if those people that aren't, quite savvy to what ZBrush is or all of that, we started this new platform. It's our online streaming portal, so ZBrushLive.com. And we have a couple different shows, basically. So we have our own podcast, which currently I'm the host. I sit with, basically what we're doing now, different artists in different industries, and kind of get to know their experiences and their path and how they kind of got to where they were. And, in hopes to really enlighten and inspire those young artists out there that are seeking, a career, and how to do it properly, because the best way to learn is to follow those people that paved that way and learn from their experiences. So, we have the ZBrush podcast, and we're doing all kinds of stuff too. We have another show that we do on Twitch, which are called Z Plays, which those are a little bit more special. We basically sit with, we're very fortunate at Pixologic knowing all the artists that work in the gaming industry and the film industry and what they do. And we've been lucky to get to know these people on a personal level, most of them, just because we see them, and our community is just so close. I think the ZBrush community is insanely cool, and they're so willing to share information, and the communication is so good. So with all those connections that we've made, we wanted to bring those artists that work at, for example, these Z plays are based on video games. So it's dealing with the artwork that goes into the game, kind of like a podcast, but we live stream, we'll play. For example, we played the most recent Doom. So the most recent Doom that came out last year, we had Jason Martin, Brian Wyatt, and all the guys over at id Software who worked on all the characters, and we play the game with them and kind of have commentary and back and forth. And it's a casual, fun experience while talking about art and talking about,
that's cool,
what goes into it. It's really fun. We did one with Fallout 4 with the Bethesda guys.
Who do you have on the Fallout episode?
Lucas Hardy and Dennis
Mayunas.
Yeah, actually, I was talking to Dennis just before. Originally, when we spoke last week, and I was actually asking him, like, do you have any questions to ask the ZBrush guys? So he had a few I'm going to relay to you guys later on.
Oh, okay.
Dennis and I go
those guys
way
are
back,
awesome.
like 1,000 years. So he's a good dude.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you guys were friends. That's awesome. I didn't know them until we did that Z play, but they're extremely cool. And gosh, those guys are responsible. I mean, same with id Software and everybody we've done it with. Like, they're responsible for so much, and that game was so successful. And that was a really fun episode we did with them. So that's kind of a rare thing. We're not doing that regularly. We'll be posting those maybe once a month or once every couple months if it's a popular game and worth doing it. But a lot of all this stuff, by the way, ZBrush podcast, the Z plays, it's all at zbrushlive.com. And I think one of the most exciting things that we have on there now is also we're going to be streaming regular content on Twitch. Mm-hmm. So for those people that aren't familiar with Twitch, it's basically, it's a platform for most people to watch other people play video games, but they have this whole creative channel as well that it's really just getting started in the last year, where we have Pixologic picked representatives who are going to be scheduled 2-3 days a week at regular times, and they're going to be showing ZBrush live where you can interact and chat with them. And it's like, I don't know if you've ever, Allan, I'm sure you've done like lunch crunches or sculpt sessions with friends, or kind of just a hangout, where you sculpt or model or, work on artwork and just chill. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what that is. And it's allowing a larger community across the world because, we realize that the ZBrush community is everywhere in so many different countries and in some places you might not think. So we've been trying, kind of long-winded here, but since I started, we've been building to this point where we're trying to broaden that platform and give people as much information as possible. And it's kind of where we're at now. We just launched ZBrush Live Monday, and it's been going really well. We've got a ton of viewership on Twitch. If you head over to zbrushlive.com right now, you'll be able to see the schedule and see who's been up. No,
it looks insane. And I love that. So in a way, you guys are centralizing like because you guys have so many different resources for training and helping other artists. So at least this way you're able to centralize a lot of it in one place, as well as then, give a lot of focus to the live stuff that you guys are doing. I love it.
Exactly.
That's cool. And I don't know, like with this, I'm kind of curious if you guys want to touch on it, or we can avoid it. But in terms of platforms, I mean, Twitch sounds like the ideal platform for you guys anyway. But did you guys explore any other live platforms as well, just to see what ones might work well for what you're doing, or was it always Twitch?
It's like it was a Twitch. The reason why we started with Twitch, basically, because we're trying to reach a broader audience, a new audience because the thing is ZBrush is kind of used in everything. So we really have kind of reached a point where we're only sharing all this stuff and we're going to continue to share for our current users, and all that's good for them. But there's a whole new younger crowd of people that are interested in video games. It's like that culture is so unique and special, and a lot of them are probably artists or have intentions of getting into it. So our hope was that we would be able to reach a broader audience, and we've used other services like the ZBrush Summit is the event we do every year. It's like our big event.
I think that's where it started. That's live streamed.
That was live
free to everybody. So, it's been very successful and everyone loves it. So it's just taking that culture from Summit and say, can we now do this on a regular daily basis?
Right.
We've done stuff with Google Hangouts, we have a YouTube channel that has all of our videos on there. Mm-hmm. It's just, Twitch seemed to have everything there that we needed to have interaction with the community.
Twitch has the community. They have the numbers. Their viewership is insane.
It's insane.
Look at how many people are on Twitch.
I'm still trying to figure out why kids are just sitting there in the thousands watching someone play a video game.
It goes back to the first part of our conversation about just attention and where we spend our time. It's a new thing that I'll watch. We spend so much time working in development. We both teach part-time. We teach ZBrush, and we're also trying to be artists and work on stuff. So I feel like every year I just have less and less time to spend playing video games or even watching some of the movies I want to catch. So I'll watch video game walkthroughs with no commentary. Like I watched Firewatch, which was one I really wanted to play, but I couldn't find the time to do it.
So you're watching in double speed or something so you can get back to work.
Well, I'll actually watch it in real speed with sound, and I'll put it in the background while I'm working on artwork.
That's cool.
It's a way to kind of get both, and it's inspiring. It's, you'll find that those games are games like, I'm really invested in games that tell stories and that are, I'm kind of over the whole Call of Duty, shooter
you
kind
just
of
hit it
phase.
on the head. Video games now are very much, there's a story.
Yes.
It's a film.
It is.
And instead of watching the film, you're playing in the film. And I think that's why games have blown up more than ever, and why you can create something like this Twitch TV.
Right.
Or when people are just watching kids, you're watching a movie, and then you control it so the movie can change, in essence.
Exactly.
Why? So as a huge film buff, that's what interests me about it. And it's really interesting. And some of the stories, let's face it, are amazing. That's why they turn them into films. Mm-hmm. Then not very successfully, mind you, most of the time.
I don't think it's ever been successful.
Do
we have one?
There's a couple.
I don't know.
I can name one, too.
All right, you name one, Allan, because I'm curious.
I'm glad you didn't say name two, because I'll be like, oh shit. No, I've never played.
I don't think there's two, but if you have two, I'd be impressed.
But are you hold on, Allan? Before you say anything, are you saying success by that the majority of people liked it, or
Rotten
dollar
Tomatoes
amount,
score?
like it made money?
Rotten Tomatoes.
I'd say it's more enjoyable rather than being financially.
Okay, so go ahead. What's yours?
Yeah, because I mean, fuck, if your Fast and Furious 8 can make money, then
I know, right?
So
yeah, exactly.
Actually, I was hanging out with a few of the Digital Domain guys the other day. They just wrapped on Fast 8. Fast 8 or Fast 9. I've lost 8.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Triple X.
And they're walking me through like the some of the big sequences in the movie. I'm just like, holy shit. But I don't know. Like I agree. I think it's kind of like the whole comic book adaptations. Like, before Singer did X-Men, there wasn't really a single good comic book adaptation, really. There's a few that were more kind of like loosely tied to the origins.
I give the first X-Men a pass. Forget the Shadow. You're talking about with Billy Zane with that purple suit and the skull. Okay, I'm notorious for bad movies.
You're saying Phantom is like a good film?
The Phantom. The Shadow. The Phantom was Billy Zane.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the Shadow was the Baldwin.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Fine. But to each his own.
So at least like for me, like X-Men 1 is okay. It's nothing amazing, but it was one that kind of said, okay, financially movies can do well, and that's therefore Spider-Man and everything else started like getting budgets.
I give X-Men 1 and Spider-Man 1
the Rocketeer,
pass
baby,
because they were the first ones that.
The Rocketeer
was good.
X-Men.
Rocketeer was good. I liked it.
Darkman. Liam Neeson, baby.
Good. See, none of those financially did well. But,
wait! I thought we were
right.
talking about video games.
So no, I know. I'm just giving you a bit of background here. But like, for me, I've never played the game Silent Hill, but I watched the movie, and I got to say, like, I really love the feel of it. Like, it definitely captured. Like, I could picture that being the game, and it didn't really have like a fantastic ending or anything like that. In fact, the ending blows. But in general, though, like
the build up, I agree. Like building up towards the end, I remember seeing that.
Creature designs were amazing.
It definitely kept me in it.
They at least made it feel in the beginning a little bit like the game.
Yeah,
and that game's scary if you turn the lights off.
Did you guys play the Hideo Kojima the tech demo that they did for PS4? It came out a couple years ago.
Okay.
It was just a teaser. It was like the first 20 minutes of the game that ended up not being released because he left the company. You gotta watch. You can watch it online. Just look up Hideo Kojima Silent Hill.
Okay.
Whatever. It's got the guy from Walking Dead, Norman Reedus, was going to be in it.
Yeah.
And I played it. I'm not good with horror in general, and I don't know why I thought this was going to be cool, but it was a terrifying thing.
I think I've seen
it.
It
was hyper realistic. It was so realistic.
That's a great game. I played that when I was in college.
Yeah.
Turned the lights off, cranked up the surround sound, and because you literally only have a flashlight to see where you're going, so you don't know what's coming at you, and that's what makes it scary. Mm-hmm. I say the best horrors, the best horror movies are the ones where you don't try and scare the person like in front of the screen kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's let the viewer scare themselves.
Right? Yeah.
So create an entity. And I think this is why Jaws was so powerful.
Oh, for sure.
Because you didn't see the shark until 45 minutes in. Because he was broken all the time.
Yeah,
Bruce was toast.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a benefit. But that opening scene, it's going to be very tough to top something like that in cinematic features.
Yeah.
And Alien, where that alien pumping out of that chest.
Right.
That's
like I love the making of that, because when Ridley Scott was directing that, like there's a famous line. It's like something happens, I think is what was written in the script. I'm probably wrong about that, but it was very vague, so that way no one really knew what was going on, and they planned it all with the actors not knowing what was actually going to happen, so that way their performances are authentic. They're scared shitless when they see, especially back then, like a freaking alien
that happened
burst out.
In Die Hard. In Die Hard, when he's when what's his face is falling off the building at the very end.
Alan Rickman?
What?
Alan Rickman, rest in peace.
He was actually falling.
Oh, wow.
They did that on purpose. So that expression
he really did have
on
a
his
great
face
scared expression.
Is real. Like
I actually just watched that the other night for the 100th
I read an
time.
article when he passed away about it that he actually was falling.
Wow.
And his face, like he wasn't falling obviously from a building.
Right.
It's blue screen, green screen, but
can we all agree that Die Hard is a Christmas movie?
It's a Christmas movie,
and it's the best.
Absolutely. Christmas time, I was like, can we all watch Die Hard? Like even the other day, like I don't know why, but like I'm always just like, it's a Christmas film, you know.
I'm a huge Christmas buff. It's my favorite. I watch Christmas movies all the time. I watch. There's the set ones I watch every year, and then for my family, I send out a text. All right, challenge Christmas movie. What movie to watch? And it bombard. My family was just.
You watch National Lampoons every year, don't you?
But then there were just the classics, the old one, like The Holiday. Like I love White Christmas. I watch that every year.
Well, I mean, It's a Wonderful Life. I still love.
Sure, you
I
can't
haven't
go
seen
wrong
it in
with
years, but I loved that movie as a kid. I love those films.
You are right. Going back to letting your imagination do all the work. Like I met M. Night Shyamalan years ago, and obviously he's put out some not so great films, but he's also put out some amazing films. And
Absolutely.
So I worked on one of his not so great films, but yeah, it was kind of interesting just hearing him talk about like when he was writing.
Last Airbender.
Yeah, Airbender.
So great visual effects though. Visual effects I liked.
Cool.
I loved.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It definitely went through its hurdles to kind of get there though. But I just remember him basically saying that like for him when he wrote Sixth Sense, it was all about not giving the audience anything, letting their imagination scare them, because he will never be able to create anything scary enough to compared to what they can come up with in their heads. And
that was a masterpiece.
Yeah, the great horror movies, that's what they are. The audience makes.
It's minimalism. The less you show, the more you're going to fill in the gaps yourself. And I think that can apply to pretty much anything. I mean, this is segueing, but when you talk about conversation, like the whole shift of power when people talk, like the person who speaks less typically has the more power in the conversation. And it's because you're kind of filling in the gaps the same way that like when you watch a scary movie, you're filling in the gaps with what's scary with your own ideas of like what personally scares you.
Yeah.
So you end up having to fill in the gaps with the conversation and give a lot more. Whereas like, they could come off as being very intelligent without saying much, just because you just assume that because, you're the one with your foot in your mouth trying to compensate a lot of the time.
Yeah, just talking over yourself and running on. Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of content, and it's all debatable. It's all debatable. But this, like, It Follows, the most recently came out. And
I haven't seen that yet.
Terrified me. That movie left a lot to imagination.
I have that in my Rolodex to watch for when my wife and baby go away to the East Coast.
Definitely don't.
Because I really don't want that on the TV.
What is this? Oh, yeah, The Witch. I also wanted to see The Witch. This actually, I heard this was great.
Yeah, it's good. Like I liked it and disliked it, but it's definitely a slower film. But it's also the fact that it leaves a lot. Even the endings, like it leaves a lot to the imagination. You got to kind of figure out like for yourself, like the whole take on things.
Yeah, and getting back to video games, I was gonna say the stuff that I love. Part of it is because, of course, they use ZBrush, and it's like there's this thing with ZBrush is that the details and the resolution, what you could achieve in ZBrush has kind of been at the same as far as detail and resolution. For the most part, it's been the same. Mm-hmm. Like even back with ZBrush 2 and ZBrush 3, you're still able to go up to high levels, but the technology hasn't really gotten to a point where you could really maintain that or transfer that in the process, especially for games, until recently. It's really starting to kind of come into a place, and I don't even think it's close to the cap yet, but we're getting better and better at figuring out tricks, how to, obviously being able to import higher geometry and higher levels is a big part of it because processors are getting faster and even consoles are getting faster. But to my point, games like, I love games like Uncharted, and I think The Last of Us was my favorite game I think I've ever played. I played it through 3 times, and it's one of those things where I have so much love and appreciation for it. I don't know if I want to see that go to big screen and be ruined, like I understand how the Resident Evil fans feel because it's like, no, this is my one thing, and I don't want I don't want to tarnish that memory of it. Mm-hmm. It's like it's very, very special because for me, as I get older and it gets, you have to really find tricks to inspire yourself to create any kind of artwork. So, keeping that stuff in perspective, and I'm always kind of looking for new stuff to keep me fresh and keep me inspired.
Well, going back to Doom, I mean, that's a perfect example of like, I think for a lot of us, it's kind of like when you guys mentioned Jurassic Park and Terminator 2, mm-hmm. like Doom for me was one of the games that it was Wolfenstein more, but I got into modding.
I loved Wolfenstein.
Modding the textures, the games, like everything about it. Like I learned how to do a lot of 2D stuff back then just because I wanted to be able to change the games. And so I was obsessed with Doom. And when Doom, the movie came out, it's just like, I can't watch this. This is painful because you built it up in your head so much.
I know. The one thing I liked about that movie, that was the only part I enjoyed, was the end when when what is his name? He plays, what's his name from Star Trek? He played the good guy. I can't remember. I know his name. Anyways, the good guy in the movie, he gets injected with whatever, and so he kind of has the ability where it goes to that first person where it's fast, high frame rate, kind of going through and just blasting a bunch of zombies, and it really mimicked that feel from what Doom was with that on-screen kind of effect. But that was like the one thing it was like, why have they not been doing more of this the whole movie?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, Framestore did that whole sequence. And yeah, Hardcore Henry, who was it? It was Hardcore Henry came out recently. That was the whole movie done first person.
I saw that. I loved it.
I haven't seen it yet, but trying to think, the studio was Zero VFX in Boston and LA now. I guess they did a lot of work.
We might be doing a podcast with one of the artists from Zero FX. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, they're a good bunch of guys. I did Equalizer with them, and I got to enjoy some good old Boston Christmas weather when we're working the film out there. It's freezing.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
New Hampshire, that whole area for Christmas time, but it's beautiful up there.
Yeah,
that whole coast.
I just couldn't do it, and here I am in Portland. I'm like, all right, it's like 50, and I'm like, fuck this. Yeah, so
I've become such a weenie. Michigan, I used to be so trained for that weather. Now here it's 40 degrees. I'm like, where's my coat? It's terrible. So I'm ashamed.
Did you guys see Assassin's Creed? I didn't see it, but
I still haven't seen Assassin's Creed, but it's just coming out of theaters. I don't think it's
garbage.
Really? Assassin's Creed.
Assassin's Creed. I haven't seen it yet. Is it good? Or
I don't know. None of us have seen it, but I really wanted to. Fassbender's always great.
I love Fassbender.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's got an 18% in Rotten Tomatoes by the critics 18%. And a 54% by the viewers.
I'm going to make my own decision. You know,
I'm literally looking at a list right now of games.
Yeah, I could still find something I might like about it. Who
Turned
knows?
into films. I know Solomon loved Pokemon movies, so that's a plus.
Oh, the first Pokemon
there
movie
you go.
was
See?
legit.
You gotta, if you guys can see his face right now, his face lit up like a Christmas tree. Well, his lights are like...
Dude, you gotta understand. I was in like a Pokemon league at Toys R Us Tuesday and Thursday, and it was serious business. Making your own decks. Business. The movie came out.
You know what? Your Pokemon is my marbles. Me right now, I'm trying to read more often than I have ever before. And right now, I'm reading the Ed Catmull book, and it's interesting how much that guy's actually given us in the computer world. I don't think people understand
how many things that guy
invented. It's crazy.
Yeah, how
far into it are you, Paul?
What?
How far into the book are you?
I'm in chapter 5 right now, so I'm going into chapter 6.
Nice. Yeah, Creative Inc. Yeah, it's a great book, and I just from a business standpoint, it's just amazing the kind of management mindsets he's kind of innovated with inside of Pixar. And I don't know, like it's just I've met so many people that pick up the book just because they're like, oh, I want to learn a bit more about Pixar, and just end up like I was talking with a few Pixar guys. I think we were in Paris last year, and we're chatting about this, but like, yeah, just some of the ways that he's kind of looked at what's working in the company, what's not working, and not been afraid to challenge all of that and really kind of step out of like having a hierarchy in the company and really allow everyone as artists to kind of be artists, and have a say in everything. And even for the people who are even, let's say, the directors, be able to challenge them in a way so that way they can grow, and everyone without hurting each other's egos have space to be able to grow and yeah, like have all the support of everyone else in the company while they're still the individual in charge of everything. Like it's pretty amazing. I really love that book.
I'm gonna have to read this.
I'm enjoying it. I'm actually reading it to my daughter, so that's actually because it's that's
cool.
As a father now, having a child, it is tough. I come home, she's awake, and then now you're just exhausted, and you're trying to get her to go to bed.
Yeah.
And then they just don't go to bed. It's just they're full of energy. So by the time you get them to sleep, all of a sudden you're like, oh, man, it's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, I'm tired. Dude, I gotta go back tomorrow and do more work. But my wife has been amazing, and thank God. She's in my life, but she reads to her so much and everything. So I've just said, you know what, during my time when I want to read the book, I actually just read it to my daughter.
Yeah.
I put her down in her bed and I just read it out loud.
That's cool.
And it's just so and that's good for a kid to hear any word, even if it's not a picture word book, any word, it helps them, I think, immensely.
Yeah, there's something about reading. Reading it's lulling in a way sometimes, unless it's, Harry Potter.
And for me, it's really hard for me to read. Because my mind, I don't know if it's just me or maybe every artist has this. Maybe it's my ADD or something.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. My mind goes totally somewhere else. I'll read like flip 4 pages like, wait a minute, what did I just read? Because I was totally thinking about this that I read like 4 pages ago and I have no idea what I read. And that's why I didn't read a lot because it's like, it seemed like a waste of time for me because I would never retain enough because I would daydream too much,
right,
and start thinking about art or something else or a word triggered something for me, and I'm reading, but my mind is not
exactly several pages ahead of time. You're like, wait a minute, I read the last few pages and I totally wasn't paying attention.
I've done that so many times.
Right. So I find it, and ironically for me, reading out loud has helped me immensely.
Yeah, because you're not trapped in your own head, and you don't let your
just reading it and then just reading it to her.
Yeah,
and getting her. And it's been an invigorating experiment, and it's been interesting for me. So I have a goal of some books I want to read this year.
Yeah.
That I'm very excited.
Well, that's why I podcast, man. That's why I'm consistently listening to about 20 podcasts at one time, and I'm just going through all the time, and it's become my main source of news, information, exploring new things that I might not know about, and of course, reading is so important. I just finally started reading The War of Art. Mm-hmm. Which is one I've been sitting on forever, but I've heard enough about it from some podcasts that I listen to, and it just keeps coming up. Like, I just got to read this book.
Another good book, since we're talking about, is another one. I forget the name of it. Is it I Hired Steve Jobs? Crap. Anyways, it's about the CEO.
Something about Steve Jobs.
That ran Atari. Jobs.
Yeah, I got fired by Steve Jobs.
There's a book about the CEO of Atari. And going through the process of hiring Steve Jobs. And he talks about the culture at Atari and why Atari got to where it was and how it did, and then the downfall of Atari as well. It's actually a really good book.
It's all really E.T., man. E.T., the anniversary game that they released, right? That's the big one.
Well, that's not it. That's the thing. Everyone says E.T. was the downfall of Atari. That's not true. They had many more titles that failed.
The
big time.
But that was the most famous.
E.T. But there's a good documentary.
I watched it.
The documentary is really good on that.
There's a book. There's a book called Masters of Doom, which talks more about John Carmack and John Romero and the development of Doom and how they split off and the egos kind of within the company and everything else. And it's so funny because like I read that book a long time ago, and I didn't really think anyone else would ever read it. And my last day in LA, I was walking by and there's this younger kid reading the book. I really wanted to freak him out. And I actually went to say something, and I had to restrain myself because he's just like sitting there at a cafe reading a book, and I was going to be like, "Good book," to scare the crap out of him and keep walking. But
good book.
Just because I never pictured someone else like reading a book like that. Steve Jobs or something. I'm like, I can understand that. The Atari guy, I've seen interviews with him talking about Steve Jobs. I think it'd be cool to delve into that. The biggest thing with moving from LA, out of everything, when the movers came, I'm like, I just want to let you know I've got a 600-pound arcade machine. This is gonna suck. And I ended up tipping the guys like $500 because when they left, because one of the guys had a bleeding hand. I don't know what that was from, but something to do with my move. The other guy, from just lifting the arcade machine and pulling through the elevator, had like slices going down his hand. I guess they tried to catch it at one point. Yeah, on both arms too. So it's kind of
interesting.
So yeah, I felt really bad.
These guys sound really clumsy.
Well, I thought they did a great job, and then I got a call from HOA saying that there's about $1,000 of damage to the elevator. So I'm like, oh crap!
I thought you were gonna say $1,000 of damage to the movers.
Yeah.
They're gonna need stitches.
But for me, like, the whole Atari and like all that stuff, like I ended up watching a documentary on the Amiga randomly last week. And now that YouTube is on our TVs, like if you have a smart TV, suddenly I'm on there all the time, and it's just like, oh,
I do that too on my PS4.
Yeah, and actually the cool thing was it was talking about like Deluxe Paint and how like people started using that in the industry video toaster, and I thought that was awesome. I'm like, oh shit, like Deluxe Paint's where I started out. So
that's cool.
I love kind of like those blasts from the past for nerdy shit that we never really hear about.
Well, I was speaking of YouTube. I was gonna say I haven't seen. I'm sure there's tons of documentaries on id Software and in the history of Doom, but I watched one on YouTube. We did a podcast or a Z-Play, one of our Z-Plays with the id Software team, the artists that worked on Doom.
Oh, who was it?
It was one of our, it was Jason Martin, Brian Wynia, who am I forgetting? Emmanuel, and I'm forgetting, there was all four, but it's up on iTunes.
Denzel.
It's on Denzel, yeah.
And
it's on YouTube, and it's on our iTunes ZBrush podcast as well.
Right.
But anyways, it's just the history of that company is so crazy, and then now for them to have transitioned into Bethesda, and it seemed like it's in a good place. But I just it's amazing how what the impact came, especially in the gaming world, just what Doom had on video games and first-person shooters, and how much has come just from that alone. Like the obsession of, like, they had great stories of, back when they were, kids, and, it wasn't, censorship was so different then, where it was taboo you couldn't play Doom if you were 12 years old. Your parents would ground you for a month. But so it was like this secret thing that you'd get away with, and it was kind of scary and it was bloody. It was just, I remember being at my cousin's house playing that game in secret, and it was like, I don't know. It's so different now.
Oh man, you had to write down the internet time at AOL. Oh, I was on there for 30 minutes. Mom would come. So what were you doing for 30 minutes on the internet? What's going on?
Yeah.
Probably going back to the book, because people who are listening to this were probably yelling at me. It's Nolan Bushnell, and the book was called "Finding the Next Steve Jobs: How to Find, Keep, and Nurture Talent." It's actually a really good book. It's $10 on Amazon right now.
That's
by
awesome.
the way.
Do they have an acronym for that long title?
I don't know. They're really pretty much going for finding the next Steve Jobs. Is really the title.
Oh well.
It's a good book.
I think that we should find our own. It doesn't have to be Steve Jobs. It could be something new.
Well, you can take things like you said. We're talking to Carmack. He left. He went to Oculus.
Yeah.
And that's probably maybe even when the company maybe made its changes.
Yeah, that's true. They had
the founder's not there anymore.
Right.
Someone else takes over the company. It's the same thing would happen with Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
He got what's his face from Pepsi to come in, and he got kicked out of his own company.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere. There's a lot. Some of that's happening right now as we speak.
Right. It's a weird thing. Like I don't claim to know how it played out, but
it happened with Pied Piper, for Pete's sakes.
Pied Piper.
Only like 5% of the people listening are going to get that.
I hope that. I hope people are dying, because that's last episode of season 1.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss, but great, best episode for sure. My favorite. But I was gonna say the Doom stuff. Like it seemed like it reminded me of the whole. I listened to a whole series. I listened to this history podcast on this guy Dan Carlin. He did a
hardcore history.
Hardcore history. I love it. Do you listen to him?
Yeah, a little bit. It's awesome though. I love it.
Did you listen to the Mongols, the Wrath of the Khan series?
No, I haven't yet. But that's the thing, is that's like the number one.
You got that. I think that is. It's been my favorite. I've listened to all of them now, and it's by far the best. It's just so interesting to hear how you always hear these stories of Genghis Khan, and he was like that. I compare it to like CG artists. He was like part of the people that developed, that are working on at Pixar and developing all these new technologies and pioneering it. He had a vision, and he was assertive, and he all he cared about was that thing, and his lifetime pursuit was conquering all of Asia. But then what ends up happening is his sons and grandsons end up squandering over the wealth, and it becomes the purpose gets lost in what it was. And I think that happens a lot of time, especially when you're starting companies, and we change as people over time. Eventually, it's hard to keep that whatever chemistry you had in your 1920s when you're starting something might be different 30 years later, especially if you're getting Lamborghinis and Hummers introduced into your lifestyle and giant mansions. It's interesting how people
stop watching Bravo, Solomon.
If you want a good book that is very similar to that, and also a lot of people I've read about have like always referred back to it as being like the number one influence on their careers, has been The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And it's structured very similarly. And you can get the audiobook as well if you're like, no, I need it in podcast format. But
I might do that.
I love it because basically what he does is he goes through all these very key, like he researched the shit out of this and went through all these key subject matter that are related to how to essentially succeed in all these different areas. But the cool thing is that every single thing he talks about, he uses case studies from history. So he'll talk about Napoleon, he'll talk about Edison. Actually, Edison versus Tesla was a really great one about, don't do the work if you can just steal the work instead. So that was like one example out of the 48. But what he'll do is he'll talk about an example in history of where someone succeeded in doing this, and he'll use another example of where someone failed by not doing this. So
interesting.
Using case studies and communicating through stories is how we relate.
I love that. I love that idea because we're especially in today's world with how times are going right now in America. It's like there's this great divide, but I think everything should be formulated based on acquiring both sides and formulating your own opinion, having all the information, which is
the 4-Hour Work Week is a good book too.
Yeah.
4-Hour Work. I haven't heard of that one.
It's a great book.
Yeah, it's a great book. Yeah. I've got a few buddies. Like I'm now 1 degree separation from Tim Ferriss because I've got about 3 different friends who are all really good friends of him, and I'm just he's done some amazing stuff like that. That book is definitely one of those eye openers for a lot of people, I think.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out.
It's a good book.
Yeah,
it's a short read. Unlike every
there's so many
book
books. who knows how long it's going to take me to read War of Art, because it's just that's tough enough for me right now. I've been trying to do it before I go to bed just to put me to sleep. I'm basically like Lola, but I'm a big baby. I'm a 30-year-old baby.
You too?
Yeah, I have a hard time sleeping too, so I need maybe I'll come over and you can read, put me out. But yeah, it's something I'm trying to do. But like you said, we all also want to be sculpting. Like we work in software development and we help form ZBrush into what it is, but also we're artists and we have stuff that we want to do.
Yeah, that's the toughest part, is being an artist still. And I've put myself a list of things. Oh, I got to do this year. I got to just force myself to do it.
Yeah.
I was just going to segue for a second to say, like, with ZBrush, I mean, one thing you guys talked about a little bit was all the different industries. And I was kind of curious, like, for you guys, what do you find as some of the really popular industries that ZBrush gets used in? Obviously games, obviously film, but I'm sure there's a lot of surprising ones as well.
The big bread and butter, obviously, character design for games, film, environments as well. All basically anything involved hard surface, especially now that we have hard surface tools, games and film. That's like the big one. That's kind of always been the most popular. And I think it should be noted, like our founder, Allan, we submitted for an Oscar for a Technical Achievement Award. Geez, 4 years ago now, which ZBrush won that Oscar Technical Achievement Award for its contributions, particularly into film, which I think it started. ZBrush really got famous on Return of the King. Lord of the Rings was the big...
Return of the King, and then Pirates of the Caribbean 2.
Yes.
Where it became... It was around. That's when people were like, whoa, how did you make this stuff happen in the film? And that's when people discovered it was... ZBrush was one of the main tools that made certain those things, effects happened. And that's really put on there. I think ZBrush has also changed the way people concept now. So I like to call it 3D concepting. So you see a ton of artists, like we brought up Ian Joyner, for example, him and people at Legacy Effects and other studios are literally just using ZBrush, Photoshop, and say maybe Keyshot or something like that. And it's now they've got a 3D asset that they can even hand off to MPC. Let's say if they're doing the work on the film itself, they've now at least got the 3D asset to start from.
Right. There has been a slow transition from people not being kind of open to the idea of going 3D to 2D paint over, but over time you start to realize the speed and so many people are finding workflows that they can quick pump out 10 times as fast.
I think toys and collectibles has become a very big, interesting industry for people using ZBrush. Jewelry. There's a lot of people starting to experiment with the jewelry world. And I think the jewelry world might be at a point where there's the masters that had to, sculpt in wax, itty bitty millimeter scales, right? With 12 magnifiers, not really, but a joke. And now there's these people, like we've been talking about, the digital age kids in our generation or the generation before now, they're now got these things a computer and they're starting to use digital programs. So it's at the prime spot, I think, where a lot of those masters are kind of retiring in that industry or on their way of retiring and they're moving on with their life or doing something else. And the next wave is more a digital wave.
Yeah, it's a huge innovation there.
Yeah.
Because you have people starting off just
they're not doing wax
starting off in digital sculpting. I never sculpted in clay before. It was ZBrush.
I've been to a lot of jewelry companies and most of them actually didn't do any really wax work with jewelry as much as they would normally. It was just so much more digital going on. Yeah. So you see industries like that popping up a lot. And then ZBrush being one of the main tools being used in something like that.
And as far as like rapid prototyping, it's probably important to say too, like in the film business, it's not just the CG visual effects too. There are people that are using ZBrush to create props and blow up in CNC as far as environment set pieces. We know we've been talking to artists recently that are doing that are transitioning from the old school way of building sets and now they're using ZBrush and other applications for maybe scale or whatever. And they're designing all of it, blowing it up, carving out in foam or whatever, and then they're able to paint over and kind of get that mixture between digital to quickly crank out that large piece, basically. Because it ultimately it is faster, and that's the thing is. But I appreciate and I love especially toys like Sideshow Collectibles. They do a ton of stuff in ZBrush. A lot of their character sculpts are in ZBrush, but also they have a Waxworks section where they still sculpt in clay, and they kind of keep the roots in mind, which I think is important. It's always good to have that mixture because I think it keeps it real. It keeps it tangible, I guess, in a way.
Well, you talk about innovation, and I know we were talking earlier, I think before we started the episode, but usually about your daughter, using computers and things like that, or the iPad, iPhone. Like I've seen that too, where my friends' daughters have played around with my iPad and they know what they're doing. They're able to play games and play Fruit Ninja and do stuff like that. And even it's funny, one of my friend's daughters, she went and touched my laptop while I was working on it from this cabin during Thanksgiving, and she's trying to swipe the screen to unlock it. You know what I mean? And she's one. So it's just you look at that where you get this traditional format that people have grown up building jewelry and having a very specific way of doing things. And now suddenly we've got this generation of people that you can work anywhere in the world. You can do whatever you want from the internet. You don't need these huge back end of equipment in a process and learning to get it all done. You can literally say, okay, I've got a computer. I've got my Wacom. I'm ready to rock and be able to start doing art and doing things and intuitively learning it all and having unlimited resources to learn online as well.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's just an amazing time, and I think that if you look at it with the right perspective, there's so much. I get excited because I love learning new things and I love trying new things. So knowing that there's more to investigate and discover, it makes me hopeful. If I didn't have any of these options, I feel like I'd probably go crazy.
Well, I think a lot of this technology, you look at when I came in, it was an SGI computer. It was $30,000. Maya was like $15,000.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier.
Now you can get a notebook. You can even go buy ZBrush Core for $150 from us. Or if you want to, you can do the package for $200 that gives you a tablet and ZBrush Core.
Right, you get the tablet
and you can go buy under $2,000. You can start creating some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
And then if you want, talking about printing, I want to print it, there's companies. I can send it to something like Shapeways or Sculpting or iMaterialize, or there's everywhere across the world. I can just send my file, print, and they mail it to me.
Yeah.
Like having that capability now of it's right there. And if you want it, you can get it now. The internet and being in the digital age has definitely changed things.
Yeah. If anybody that maybe doesn't use ZBrush that's listening, we just released a ZBrush Core version, which is a stripped down basic version. All the best stuff of sculpting in ZBrush, but less of all the technical stuff, that is in the full version. And it's like Paul said, you can get a bundle for $200 roughly with a tablet and software and off and running. We have tons of free education, but it is an investment, and I've realized that learning new things, if you haven't gotten to that point, how many times have we talked to people, Paul, where they're like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to get into this for years. Like I sat with the guy that was working in practical effects for set building 5 or 6 years ago, and I did a whole weekend and I was teaching him ZBrush, and he was going to implement it, and 6 years later he's just now doing it. He's just now getting into it, and I think it's kind of becoming a necessity for some people, not for everyone. There's still a mixture of the old school way of doing it, but it's interesting. Like there's good stories of what is his name, Derek Pendleton. Derek Pendleton was working in set design, and he was hurt on the job where he physically he couldn't work the way that he used to, and he was out of work.
He was in the hospital for a long period of time from the accident. So he just started doing ZBrush.
And he somehow got introduced to ZBrush, and and now he's able to do the same things he was doing in a different method, right? But it's still the same physical thought process that goes into sculpting. It's just doing it in ZBrush instead, with the intention of, blowing it up or making it big. And he does a lot of stuff that deals with toys, collectibles, the physical printing and manufacturing. So that's what he always knew. But ZBrush kind of saved him in that way, where he was able to, keep doing what he loved. And I
think it's an art journey, really. If you're an artist, it's just the computer's another medium, and having an application that can make you kind of discover more and try some new things and experimenting some things is really good. I can think of some artists where their wife came up and he goes, "Thank you, because now there's no clay coming into my house that I have to worry about cleaning up." Yeah, sure. Right? And then there's things like at the Los Angeles Braille Institute, where people that are technically blind, they're able to sculpt, not just with their hands, but they got to actually sculpt with something like ZBrush. And to them, that's like talking to those students. It's a life-changing thing for them, because it's how they can express what's going on in their lives. And they can have some fun.
How does it work?
And they're not 100%.
They're not 100% blind.
Right.
So there's various things.
Okay, so be like high contrast.
Yeah. There's like you have a tunnel vision, so you can only see a certain degree. They consider that you're blind because you wouldn't be able to operate a vehicle, or you can't do the normal things that all of us can do. We take advantage of, but there's people there like I met that are blind and deaf.
Wow.
So, and then they're like 100% blind and deaf. So, but they're sitting there sculpting with their hands and they just using feel, of course, to do what they want. Stuff, or when I talk to people that are doing like a face replacement or those kind of things is also what I enjoy about the job, and just giving a person another avenue to do something that they were never able to do before. And I think the application's built on that foundation, is creating something that you could do with a computer that wasn't possible before, and continue to push that envelope and continue to innovate and give something to an artist that they were never able to do before on a computer.
What do you think is some of the most far out uses for ZBrush that you never would have pictured, like people, being able to do with it?
Oh man,
man, I got so many things.
There's a lot of. I mean, it's interesting. What I find very interesting is that there are people that do ZBrush is just in medical illustration, like for people that do scientific, like a doctor needs to have like reference images, or you have animations of blood cells traveling through the body, or something along those lines. There's a ton of sculpture, and
even the operating stuff they use now, where the doctors will use. In an operating room, they won't use their hands anymore, right? It's on computers. Even the casings and stuff, the design, stuff like that, ZBrush is being used to do some of those designs. Automotive, Airbus, Boeing, let's say, also for aviation. But there's always, every time in my travels, there's always somebody that's doing something very unique and different that makes me go, that's pretty cool. I never thought about using it that way, or I never thought we would be used in this way, whether it be, we are being used in several different industries. Louis Vuitton, for an example. Like, really? We're used to make handbags? But we are. You get design, and you can create. Look, if you look at a purse or anything from that, there's hardware that they need to make.
For sure.
And then there's certain design elements that they want that it's just super easy to do in something like ZBrush.
Yeah, plus you have Control Z for,
Sure.
For sure. Real life.
Man, I can't tell how many times my hand does that when I'm sculpting in clay. Oh, man. Or the ever probably, that eye looks great. Darn it, I got to do the other side now.
Yep.
I had so much appreciation after I took a clay sculpting class with John Brown, and I have a totally different outlook on it. It took me so much time, and coming from ZBrush at a beginner level at a very young age, it was like digital sculpting made sense to me after practicing long enough. And clay was like the basic principles are the same as far as silhouette and shape and blocking out the form, but the time it takes to get to that point, it's depending on how much it takes you longer, right? It's like starting over, but then also you have to sculpt the other side, and you're sculpting it in pose, it's unless it's just like a standard neutral character, which that's never fun. Yeah. So but to your question, I don't know, man, that's tough, because if you're not wowed by the stuff that's done with 3D printing for those people out there, there's all kinds of crazy things to be done with using ZBrush to literally make, like Thomas Wittelsbach is a jeweler, and he's not really, he's very much an artist. Like
he comes from the film world too.
He comes from the film world, right?
He did sets and stuff for a while too.
And he has this crazy ornate way of decorating pieces of jewelry, and that gets manufactured and cast in bronze, and it's all like a lot of handwork afterwards. But the detail work is insane, and the stuff that comes that you see his ZBrush work. If you don't know Thomas Wittelsbach, if you have seen ZBrush around, he's the guy that always has the blue matte cap, the bright blue matte cap color. All of his stuff is always blue. And he's got a super cool style. But he did a really cool. We have a table here that he created. It's an alien rep. It's the base of it's a glass table, but the base is like all the texture from the xenomorph with the skin and all the folds. And it's like it's a piece of furniture that's sitting in our office that was made in ZBrush.
That's awesome.
Well, the thing is like what, $60,000-$70,000? It's all bronze. It's just this really like sturdy metal.
But his jewelry pieces sell for $10,000, $12,000.
Yeah,
he's done swords for a while too, and knives, the handles and things like that.
He said some other risque things, which I don't know if I should mention. I'm still trying to get Nike to see the shoes that I went on a tear for months. I created
an Allan
technique.
Yeah, I'll be going the next week to the campus.
I'm going to send it to you. I did some Nike cross trainers, did some Vans, and I did some like restaurant shoes for the zombie character I was sculpting. But I found a technique with panel loops. It's like, man, I feel like somebody's going to have to see this and be like, yeah, like, we could use ZBrush for this. Radio silence. I'm like, come on, people. This is like, I mean, I've definitely seen shoes being done in ZBrush, but it's clean edges and all the techniques are important. Like Paul's book pretty much outlines all that stuff with the skates, getting that. And that was it's probably better ways to do it now.
Oh yeah.
Definitely better ways to do it now.
I wrote that 5 years ago. I think, something like that. It's
crazy how much has changed in ZBrush in the last 5 years that we've been here. We've gone through. I mean, we develop each release number is kind of like a full like number update.
It's always a full. Yeah. We don't do even though it is 4R8 coming out next, but that's considered a point. Right. But we always put so much in it.
Yeah.
That I constantly get hit up by artists saying, "Hey, I'm still learning the last."
Slow down. Yeah.
Well, I remember this is before Solomon's day. We had 1 year where we released, I'd say an 18-month span. I think we released 5 versions of ZBrush. We were just on fire. Nice. We were just go, go, go. And we were just like, okay, we got to get this out now.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we just kept going and we were in a rhythm.
I was here 4R2 between 4R2 and 4R4. Wasn't that period where there was? That was
the tail end.
Okay.
Of that period because it started with 4.
I got to see part of that, and it was nuts. When I started, I was just like, "Holy shit! Like, what do I do? Like, how do I keep up with this? Very, very late nights."
And I was single at that time, so thank goodness.
So that's probably why you were single.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually,
it worked out.
I don't know if
I think my relationship ended because of that.
I need just remember this now. Actually, there was a TV series I had greenlit as a reality TV show I was going to be doing, which basically I came up with, which was a ZBrush TV show. So this is something that it got greenlit and then it got put on hold because the studio that was producing it went through a few managerial changes. And in typical fashion, it's got nothing to do with the content. It's to do with the egos of no one wants to continue producing a show that someone else came up with, as in like someone else discovered. So it ended up getting put on hold, and I could shop it around, but I didn't really care too much about it at the time. But basically, it was just like a competition-based thing about creature design. So coming up with pairing teams of people together where everyone's given a challenge over like 1 or 2 days to design certain themed characters, whether it be doing let's say classic horror characters like the Mummy or whatever else, or going in and doing like a 3D body scan of someone, then augmenting their face with like mechanical parts for like a cyborg, and there's all these different themes, and it was going to be a lot of fun. Like we were going to do 10 episodes initially for it, and that was on ZBrush, and it was one of those things that I could confidently know that we could do in ZBrush to get it turned out in time, whereas like anything else, like there's a lot of ideas being thrown around, and it's just like, look, 3D is 3D, like shit takes a long time, whereas going this route, like this is something that actually is interesting. And that was the big thing that a lot of the studios were worried about, was like, we don't want to see someone just clicking a mouse and for hours on end. But
kind of in line with that, there was, when I think it was season maybe 2 of Face Off, we did an episode.
I think it was deeper.
Actually, I'm interviewing Neville Page, who was on that show this week.
Neville Page.
I helped put together the show where we showed ZBrush for the first time in that first. I think it was maybe season 3 or 4.
Yep.
Actually, it was Raf Grazzetti on that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there was a bunch of pro artists that were helping the contestants to kind of get their bearings going.
Yeah, they teamed up. I recruited a couple ZBrush artists, and then they teamed up with the contestants.
Zach Petruk was there.
And then Zach Petruk was there, and Stefano Dubé was there as well. I think if I remember right, it was 6 artists that I got. Mark DeDecker was another one.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to remember. So anyways, I got it to where the ZBrush artist sat with the contestant, and then they designed their idea in 3D inside of ZBrush.
There were some great sculpts.
And then they took that and then went and made it.
That's
and
cool.
Did the makeup.
Yep.
And now ZBrush has been in a lot of episodes. I know Neville actually did an episode where I think he did like 3 or 4 designs.
Yeah.
And then the contestants had to pick one of those designs and make the design.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And they've done a couple other episodes.
My aunt called me up when that went on. She was like, she just randomly liked the show Face Off for some reason. She had no idea like how it related to my world or our world. art, and she saw ZBrush. She's like, doesn't my nephew work for that? And she called me. She's like, I'm watching this show Face Up. Do you know what it is? Like, yeah, of course I know what it is. And I had to like explain to her, like, oh yeah, that's a big deal. You know, it was a good big moment for us, you know, to see that in that world, kind of some ideas that clash a little bit. You know, the practical people and the digital people, sometimes there's a little bit of a divide, but ultimately I think it's all in the same vein of, you know,
that's the stuff I like the best. That's why I like going to studios for visits like Legacy Effects or Ironhead or studios like that where they're doing digital, making it practical and physical.
Yeah.
Those are cool. It's really fun to see that stuff.
In line with the ZBrush show that you were talking about, it's a great idea, and that's something that we've kind of been working towards with all of these things. I don't know, Allan, have you watched the ZBrush Summit? Or I
haven't yet, but I'm keen to check it out. It's actually up on my screen right now.
Yeah, so basically, for anybody who doesn't know what it is, formerly we used to do the tech conference SIGGRAPH. SIGGRAPH is kind of like our big, every year we would go to SIGGRAPH, and this is kind of before my time, where I went to the last couple. And this was basically a big stage where we would go and have a big booth and show off ZBrush and the features. And it was like a yearly event that we would go to promote, you know, the new stuff. And eventually, and Paul had kind of been trying to push this idea of having our own thing, our own event where we bring who we want, we control it.
It's a more focused audience too that way.
Yeah, exactly. And we're hitting the people that we want and reaching out to our entire user base instead of one little, you know, convention center in LA that's, you know, maybe 500, 600 people a day, or, you know, a couple thousand. And so the ZBrush Summit was kind of Paul's baby, and he kind of pushed this thing forward. So it's basically a 3-day event that we live stream. So it's live streamed for all 3 days, and we have for each day, the entire day is filled with professional artists that work in video games, all the stuff we've been talking about, movies, rapid prototyping with jewelry, whatever, you know, the best of the best. And these guys come in and they present what they do and how they use ZBrush, and it's just nonstop all day. And then we have other things like the Sculpt Off competition, which kind of led me down this rabbit hole. But Sculpt Off competition is a totally new thing where we're kind of pitting artists head to head and having more of a contest, which really, I mean, before we did it, we were doing that back at 3D Printer World Expo.
Yeah.
We did the first Sculpt Off. We've been doing it for
years. I did put a bunch together before we actually did the summit and saw how well it worked. And it was interesting to see, because we'd put it on a different main stage by our booth. And in a lot of cases, sometimes there would be more people around the main stage than at even our booth or other booths.
Oh, we would destroy. All those expos, we would have consistently, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 people filling up all the seats that were available. And then some people would just stay all day.
It's cool to see something created from nothing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So from those conventions, basically, that's kind of what the summit is, but with the ability to watch it live stream from your home. So that gets all the people.
We made the Sculpt Off fun. You know, I found the people that make the actual championship belts for like WWE and boxing, and I made those so the winner actually gets the belt.
UFC, the company that makes the UFC belts. That's where we got our ZBrush
They're legit.
Belts.
You know, they're legit belts.
I want a ridiculous belt or something. Actually, I'll quickly say I saw someone the other day mention that they're an Autodesk master, like a Max Master, Maya Master, and I guess like the page got taken down on Autodesk.com for a few days, and now it's back up again. But they were basically trying to get everyone to get behind him and say like, hey, you know, like we need to fight this because this is a piece of history, and he wanted to keep his name up there, which I understand.
Yeah.
And someone along the way was just kind of talking about it, and I mentioned how like I'd go get given like a leather jacket that says like Autodesk Master or whatever on the leather jacket, and because it said that, I never wanted to wear it because I love the jacket, and I'm like, I can't wear a jacket that says like Master or something on it because it sounds freaking ridiculous.
No,
but
as an artist, you don't want to be that, you know.
Yeah, but getting a ridiculous WWE belt that says like Autodesk Master, then that would almost be worth it because it's so ridiculous that you kind of counteracts the fact that you are wearing this pretentious thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I can see them through our conference room right now. We have them hung up in these glass cases, and it's like bright gold, and it's basically just a ZBrush Sculpt Off champion, and each one, I think at the time we kind of been doing two different styles. So we do hard surface and then organic. So there's, you know, because there's people kind of ally
organic champ.
So there's a organic champ, and these guys get to keep the belt.
In the last 3 years, the winners took home a 3D printer.
Wow.
So and everyone takes home something too. So the last couple of years,
we give away tons of prizes.
They won a Forum 2.
Yep.
And then like full version of Keyshot Pro, that's $2,000.
Nomen classes,
yeah,
CTN
there's a bunch
passes.
of stuff. And we do the same thing for the summit. Last year, I think we gave around over $40,000 worth of product just to the general public.
A lot of toys and collectibles.
Toys, collectibles, classes. We gave away printers. We gave away the Moonray printers to the
I'm
general
coming along. I got
Some
no
people
chance,
got the
but I'm still
27 inch
coming
Well, I mean, just so people know, it's really just that. It's the one thing that we do every year. It's our biggest thing, and this is where we kind of showcase all the best things about ZBrush. And it's all in the vein where we're trying to broaden the way that we present this stuff, because in the CG world, there's just a lot of tutorials and education, and like just droning on and on and on about just training education is sometimes a little jarring, and it's a lot to take in, so we've been trying to come up with ways to make our stuff fun and exciting, and the sculpt off stuff is so cool. We have commentators, our coworker Joseph Drust and Jessica Drew from Blizzard Entertainment. They just sit there and comment and talk about what each artist is doing, and they'll switch to that artist's screen and talk about that for a little bit.
It's like watching a sporting event.
It is like watching a sporting event, exactly. And it's kind of become this little movement where it's getting very competitive.
Oh, it's getting very competitive.
Yeah,
and very much. I get constantly hit now.
Yeah,
emails from people wanting to be in the sculpt off.
I hope there's some ego clash like later on that gets like hyped up or whatever. It's like, oh, so
I think it's getting to that point.
It's right now on the hard surface side. Furio Tadaishi hasn't been beaten.
Nope. He's a monster. He's a monster.
So he's coming back to defend his title again. So.
2 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's the first.
So there's already that. So there's already a repeat champion. So there's already that happening where people are like, oh, I want to come and take out the repeat champion.
Yeah.
Kind of. It's fun.
You training montage.
That's kind of who we are too. Yeah. It's about having some fun and creating artwork. It's really also what it's about.
Right.
People, you learn a lot from watching people sometimes.
I think that's such a critical thing. That's what I like about my buddy Dan Rorty. He's doing a lot of Facebook Live modeling and sculpting. I'm not sure if you guys know him, but he's a Microsoft artist. You would know his work if you saw it. But he uses ZBrush and does amazing jobs for all of his characters. And I know he's been doing a lot of that. And I've been wanting to do it for the past year, and I'm hoping in the next few weeks I'm going to start doing like live classes, or at least like over the shoulder sort of thing. But yeah, I just think that like just watching someone else, like it might just be like some simple thing that they do that you're like, holy crap, like that's a really good idea. Even at times, people who are very green, like they're new to the industry, they might be doing something that you never thought of, and you're like, oh shit, like you know what? Even that person's like 2 weeks into it, they're doing something like that gives me an idea about something else. So I love
honestly, often I like Paul, just to go back to the beginning, like Paul gave me the basic set of understanding of the software, proper understanding and the base tools that I needed, and everything else, all of my learning and understanding of how to do things comes from watching other people. And there's nothing wrong with, you're not stealing, you're not taking anything from them. You're just, you're kind of, you're sitting your bird's eye view watching what they do, and you can take some parts of it and mold it. And the great thing about, if just talking about ZBrush, it's like this with all kinds of applications, but there's so many ways to do one thing in ZBrush.
Well, that was actually a comment in the stream today with the ZBrush Live.
Yeah.
Timothy Rapp was doing some stuff, and I saw in the comments, people were like, this is crazy, because they keep coming back and watching. Like, it's crazy to see just in an application like ZBrush, a different approach where somebody does it one way, another person does it another way, and another person does it another way.
And each one can be
it's art
equally as good, but depends on what you like, depends on how fast it is, depends on how you like to work. Like, I like to do a lot of hands-on work.
You put 5 people at a table that draw or paint, they're all not going to have the exact same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's crazy that people are like, well, just show me how to do it. It's like, well, I can show you how to do it this way. I could show you how to do it this way. It's really about you going on a journey to discover it yourself.
Yeah, find your own style.
I think is what. Yeah. So like all this
Bob
stuff.
Ross, there.
Yeah, there. But a tree. Yeah, exactly. But all this content's on YouTube. If you go to ZBrush at Pixologic on YouTube, our channel has every single ZBrush Summit presentation. You can watch all of them, and they're long. They're about an hour and a half. And
individual artists are an hour.
So who are some of the big names that, like some of the speakers that are attending each summit?
Rick Baker, Neville Page, Glenn Hedrick. We did a face-off one with Neville Page and Glenn Hedrick.
Yep. They showed basically they did a digital sculpt of Neville with horns. They took a scan of Neville, added horns to his head, went through the process of how to prototype it out, and then going into makeup and painting.
Yeah, and then Glenn did all the makeup, and it was put on Neville's head. So,
that's so cool.
We've had Blizzard, we've had Disney, We had Square Enix show Final Fantasy this past year.
Leica was there last
Cool.
year.
Yeah, probably hanging out with them a lot since there's no one else up here to talk to in Portland.
There's tons. I mean, there's so many people using ZBrush in different ways.
Dominic Quick, Raphael Grassetti.
Yeah, and then the super pros, like the artists by themselves who have personalities and people know them as just artists.
It's funny,
like those guys.
Yeah, Raph, like I knew him. God, I think when was it? I think it was like 2010 or whatever. Like, we ended up working together, and I think this was the first time he'd ever been to the States. And I didn't know anything about him. It's just like he was, this young guy who, was working at PsyOp when I was over there as well. So we ended up hanging out, going to lunch a bunch of times, and it wasn't until like years later I'm like, oh shit, you're like this badass guy, like doing all this like crazy sculpt stuff. So it's kind of funny just hanging out with someone and not really realizing like how much raw talent they have. Right. Like Alessandro Bodini as well. Like there's a lot of guys who are just sick, and
there's some people you just envy. You're like, oh, it's like they just get it. They just get this thing and they just destroy everything they do, like in a good way.
Who are some of the kind of rock star names in ZBrush world? Because I mean, again, it's like Photoshop or anything else. There's going to be so many, or matte painting, and there's so many amazing artists who are doing great stuff.
Yeah, I know it's tough. Like we try not to, because we have so many great friends and artists. Like the people that we've already named are definitely big ones, but I don't know. I'd almost not want to like particularly, because there's so many good people out there that are like, if you look at basically go and
10,
look,
you got to list 1,000 pretty much.
Yeah, like if you go and look at the Sculpt Off, the people that participate in the Sculpt Off, there's a lot of top talent people in that Sculpt Off. Not to mention presenters that come to the summit. We really try and pick new and fresh people that maybe we don't know, but we always have people that we do know that we know are great and have great work come on as well. Like like Zach Patrick at Disney.
Martin Verhoeven.
Yeah, Martin Verhoeven in
there's
Belgium.
There's some popular people that become, but they've also got popular not just because they're good, but they share. Yeah, and they reach out. And they communicate with the community. Yeah. And those are the people that rise to the top really fast, because not just because their work's amazing. It's because they're willing to share. Yeah. Be a part of it. You know? And we have on ZBrush Central, we have like a most popular threads of all time. And you have to reach a certain plateau of views. And there's only a handful actually that have that. Yeah. Martin Verhoeven's one of them. Definitely. Mud. I forget his Z. Magdalena Dadella is another one. Yeah. She's extremely popular. But so there are, there's popular artists definitely for sure. But I can't tell you how many times I meet an artist that I don't know them, but then they show me their work, and I'm like, what are you doing? Your stuff's amazing. Yeah. Why have I never seen your work before? And it's mostly them just being afraid to share. They're afraid to show it. They don't want to let it go. So, and that's the difficult part. I can't tell you how many times I want to hit artists over the head. They're like, okay, so who knows about this? Your cat, your mom, and your cousins? I'm like, you got to put your work's amazing. Put it up, and that's the part of the thing as an artist, I think, too, that is a tough thing. You got to be able to market yourself in a way. And so putting your work up is a good thing to do, whether it be on ZBrush Central was obviously a very popular place, or ArtStation. We did a podcast with ILM, or the guys from ILM, a few weeks ago. They did a presentation on Warcraft. Speaking of games of film, which visual effects, again, it's never visual effects' fault. I defend visual effects. It's just implementing the tools not in a non-positive way where people are attacking it. But I thought it was a great looking movie, and it had its flaws.
The only logo I've done, like the only logo job I've done in the past 15 years was the Comic-Con announcement for Warcraft, because I just figured it'd be a fun one to do. So yeah. So it's like, all right, I'm going to do some text. I'm going to do something fun though. So yeah. Well,
they do have really cool looking text. I mean, even their text is freaking beat up and scratched, and they got all this great detail. So it's a cool. I just love Blizzard style. Yeah. I like, particularly I gravitate towards stylized, that kind of world, But anyways, Chris Costa he's a well-known ZBrusher. He's kind of been there from the beginning, and he's mentioned this in passing. We've kind of gotten to know him over the years because he's so friendly with us, and he's been such a great ZBrush user. Not to mention one of the greatest sculptors out there for sure, coming from the practical world to digital.
And he was a businessman.
And he was
he was in banking.
He was in banking. He was in banking in Brazil, and then somehow made his way to ILM. Years later. It's just crazy. But he was talking about that idea of telling stories and having confident in yourself as an artist, and how important that was for him to, when he started, you can go back and listen to our podcast with those guys, and he tells a story about, this is back when there weren't as many CG forums. There was like CG Society and like a couple others, but it took a lot of confidence and willpower for him to start posting and sharing his stuff. And he got a lot of shit from people, and his work was great. And it was the same work that people were dogging on and having negative comments. He shared with, he somehow found a way to share with industry heads and people that were working for studios, and they were telling him how great his work was. And it was all up for interpretation. But like, you kind of had to get over that idea of, so what if somebody says something bad about your work? Like, take it for what it is. And if it's unfounded, then you'll probably know, but not being so invested in it where it's going to emotionally take control of you, where you don't share your work. Like, ultimately, it's all about sharing. That's why we make artwork, right? We make artwork because you want people to like it and appreciate it. You know, most people don't make it for themselves, outside of that one dude, that janitor that wrote, 100,000 books or something. And it was like some crazy story of some guy that just locked himself up for a lifetime and has all these amazing stories, never shared them with anybody. But anyways, I digress. My rant is over.
No, I mean, it's totally true. And I mean, you always, like, I had a lunch with a buddy of mine who owns a pretty big VR company in LA, and we were talking about that, how he decided that he wanted to go online and document on YouTube and Twitch a lot of really amazing stuff he's doing in VR, but in the game development space. But he decided to do it anonymously because he is a pretty big name in the industry, and he didn't want to have that associated with what he's doing. He wanted to kind of just go in there, fresh slate, do what he wants without reflecting on his business. And it was just, I could already tell where this was going as soon as he mentioned that he's posting everything that he's doing on Reddit. And it was just this giant emotional roller coaster of, like, people were excited about, like, the great work he's doing, and then, like, one person chimes in about, like, he's been in the industry for 15 years and never heard of his name because obviously he's not using a legitimate name. And then everyone starts turning on him and starting to say, you're a fake, you're a fraud, you're stealing people's work. And just, everyone is so easy to, talk shit about everyone else. And essentially, when they're not the ones actually doing anything. It's like, I think it's a lot easier to ridicule other people than to actually get off your butt and do it yourself.
I totally agree.
You're not doing it in front of their face. It's totally different. You're standing in front of the person.
Well, and that's what this, internet society has done. Is like this wave of, like, negative commenters.
I think that actually happened to Rick on ZBrush Central.
Really?
Because he was posting anonymously, and people
Rick
started.
Baker?
Yeah, people started picking his sculpts apart on ZBrush Central.
So they're talking about Rick Baker's artwork, not knowing it's him.
And then I think someone finally found out who he was, and then they went, "Dude, that's Rick Baker you're critiquing right now." Like, and
he's just learning a digital tool. Like, sorry, you didn't.
All right.
Yeah.
Never mind.
There's a famous musician, I think he's a violinist, and he, I don't know enough about the space to sound like I know what I'm talking about, but, essentially he would be booked, for months ahead of time and get paid ridiculous amounts of money to perform at a lot of different orchestras around the world. And he decided to just go and busk in Grand Central Station in Manhattan without anyone knowing who he was. And he made like $12 a day for the week that he did it. And it's just because, like, again, the interpretation, like, no one knew who he was, so the credibility goes out the window. And so for everyone, he's just Joe Blow. He wasn't someone that actually had, like, all this amazing clout and credentials behind him. And same thing, like, Banksy did that, where he spent just one day selling all his artwork, which he usually sold for a couple $100,000 a piece. He was selling for like $10, $15.
I heard about that.
Yeah, and again, like, it's only later on people might be like, oh shit, that piece of artwork I paid a few bucks for is actually worth all this money, because they have no idea.
I remember seeing one guy that bought something was like, he bought it for like $5 and it's like worth $60,000. Something ridiculous like that. It's just, it's so cool.
That's so it. Cool. Like, it's usually people get so caught up in who someone is based on how hyped up they are.
Sure.
And the thing is, like, most people, the reason they are hyped up is because they're amazing at who they are. But as soon as you take that away, because they don't have that resume next to them or whatever to say, like, I'm a big shot, suddenly everyone's able to throw in their opinion and start tearing him down. Whereas they'd probably be kissing their ass if they had that kind of introduction beforehand about how amazing they are.
Yep.
It's like, oh, I want to go get a selfie with that person because they're so and so.
Right.
Yeah.
Tone completely changes. Your demeanor's like, oh, okay, that's who that is. And yeah, exactly. It's so true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, granted, competition does fuel innovation and does push a lot of us, and being competitive or being artists, we do have that passion, so it's always going to be a part of it. But the negativity and I think that stuff is just eventually I think we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
It's just I think we're still trying to figure out the internet itself. It's like we don't really understand the impact that it has on our lives as far as how we communicate with each other and how we're still changing through that. It's like stuff you say online you would never say to somebody's face. You never would.
And that's what I love about Reddit.
It's crazy.
I haven't really spent much time on Reddit, but that's the one thing I do associate with it is just the fact that people just get torn down all the time because people, there's certain platforms people go to where they love and I can never say anonymity. See?
Anonymity?
Anonymity. There we go.
Yeah.
I always love this because I knew minutes ago, I'm like, I'm going to say it, and it's like the one tongue twister for me, but anonymity. So
Finding Nemo reference.
So with that though, like, people tend to love to go on there and tear people down because it's just like, well, that's how they get their satisfaction, and it sucks because it's the same way that they would never do that on Facebook and I actually know people do like Facebook streaming because they know that Facebook people are going to be a lot more gentle, whereas like,
do you know who they are?
Yeah, exactly. It's like your name is associated with that. You don't have this anonymity.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think it's awesome, man. And like, actually going back to Dennis Million's over at Bethesda, like he was asking about wondering like what the studio culture is at your company. Like what I guess the vibe there is like generally.
I mean, it's honestly I think everybody at Pixologic we're all extremely passionate people, and everybody is just extremely dedicated to the brand and to the company, where we all it's very much driven on this kind of has become our lives for most of us. It is kind of taken over, but I think we work really well together.
We do well, and we're all artists, so we're all trying to make something that can make us do something artistically different or accomplish to a goal. And it's very a tight-knit group that all have an idea of where we want to go in the future and what we want to do. And we work, like Solomon said, very well together, and everyone has certain aspects and part of what we do as a company that comes together very nicely.
Yeah, we're in LA, our headquarters here in LA, and that most of the, as far as production goes, as far as marketing, web stuff, us being ZBrush artists full time, we're here, but some of the development happens elsewhere. So it's a very unique way where we do a lot of communication online sometimes. There's more of us here in LA than anywhere else, but we have part of our team is in France, and so it's interesting, but it's very unique, and it's awesome because we don't get to see all of the Pixologic team as much as we would like to, but when we have the ZBrush Summit, everybody flies in town, and it's a big thing, and it's taken some time to get the right members of the team to start flowing. And this whole ZBrush Live, ZBrushLive.com is really the brainchild of something that we tried to do a long time ago. We tried to do a channel Z, a ZBrush channel that was like a thing, but it didn't really we weren't ready for it. We didn't have enough information. So over the years, we've kind of found the right team members. Now we have new people that have really helped us make this ZBrush Live thing happen. Like none of this Twitch podcast stuff would be possible without some of the latest additions to our team.
The three amigos?
Yeah, Los Tres Amigos.
So how did that come to be? Like, when did you guys kind of initially decide, like, let's go build this portal and or platform and essentially make a central location where people can go and essentially have infinite access to so much information for ZBrush?
I think it started with the idea of the conversation of trying to get away from the stuff I was mentioning earlier about just education and kind of tutorials. And we do so much for education, but we wanted to kind of bring in the entertainment and the inspiration factor and the more casual approach. And so the ZBrush podcast was really, I think, the first kind of initial thing that we were working towards. But along the way, we started coming up with these ideas for the Z plays, which were us trying to reach out to gamers specifically, trying to target, specific groups that we know, would be interested, but maybe just aren't taking the time to seek us out. And we didn't have a presence on Twitch at the time. So I think from the podcast, that was kind of the first thing. And then we've introduced this whole ZBrush Live portal, realizing that we needed a centralized location for this kind of content.
I think the summit was the catapult.
Yeah, that's true. The summit,
seeing how well people enjoyed being a part of that, even if they were online in some other country around the world, that they still felt connected to the community, even though they couldn't be here physically on location or on set. I think that's where you saw, okay, people really like this and really have fun, even if they can't physically be here. They're still engaged, and they're still learning something. They're still taking something away. They're getting inspired. So the three pillars for me for the summit was inspire, discover, and connect. So inspiring the community, discovering things, and then staying connected with people. And then just because it's on camera, you can put a face to some of the artists that you're used to seeing online as well. So I think that's also the little thing in Twitch. If you notice, a lot of people use their webcams.
Yeah,
you're putting a face to a name now,
right? Which
and
associating
it feels like you're actually in the room with them. You're connected with them, and that's I think what the summit did, and that's why it continues to grow. And we're also always continue looking to do different new things every year. I don't want to keep the same. We don't want to keep the same thing every single year, even though the base of it's the same. But
we kind of kept adding each year we've done the summit. It changes a little bit more.
We keep adding something every year.
We added like workshops. So there's the workshops with some of the best artists in the world. We had Andrew Cause doing anatomy workshops.
We had Scott Eaton doing anatomy.
Scott Eaton. We had the guys
at Doom came and did a workshop.
Yeah. That's cool.
So it's we want to keep pushing the element and thinking of ways that we can branch out to people. Because myself included, I noticed people's attention spans for watching a video on YouTube now. Because I think also what we've been talking about with this instant gratification, this instant commenting
8 seconds
capability.
to capture someone's attention on YouTube. And actually it's decreasing. It's lowered since that a year ago. It's insane.
That's crazy.
Exactly. So most people just scrub through a video, right? But then if it's live, there is no scrubbing.
Nope.
So then they're engaged, and all of a sudden they look down. They're like, holy cow, this is 45 minutes later. I've been watching this the whole time. This has been great. And then now they're engaged, and now they'll stick around for another 45 minutes or an hour. Like some of our streamers right now are going for 4 hours.
Right.
That's so cool.
We had people tuning in all day. We had concurrent viewers for Summit. I think really what did it for us was the success of the live stream. How many people we found tuning in, and how we were.
Yeah, we were shocked.
Yeah, it was. We honestly didn't anticipate as big a viewership as we got even the first year, and it's been exponentially growing because of we're doing more marketing and sharing of it. So I think realizing the potential of live stream. Live stream, just the word or the phrase, not the brand, but streaming live is a really awesome way, because it's in today's world. I don't know about you guys, but I feel that I find that I gravitate towards casual conversations and long-winded conversations where I can really get to know somebody instead of like formulaic, organized content that is sort of
have you seen me present? Seriously?
Paul, dude, trust me.
Captain Tangent over here.
Yeah, you're great. But, it's like we wanted to take all the best parts of the summit, and we don't want to take from ZBrushLive.com is not, it's sort of like an extension or a build up to the summit every year. So it's really just taking all the
summit's actually going to be on ZBrush Live now.
Yeah. So
we're going to be hosting it actually on
We've now made it kind of one big family where it's all in the same place.
It's a portal, so you can go there and get all that information right there.
Yep.
And be really engaged with us, the company, and also the artists that are joining in and reaching out to all the community.
No, I love it. Like as soon as you guys mentioned it initially, I thought it was such a cool concept because, again, I feel like, especially as a subject like ZBrush, I feel like it's very easy to get paralysis from analysis. In other words, like you go online and let's say you're new to something as big and vast as ZBrush, you're going to jump on YouTube or wherever and be like, ZBrush tutorial, search. And bam, like you're going to freak out, but also it's kind of hard to kind of filter through that and find like, okay, like time is a very valuable commodity. Where do I put my time? And if you're able to essentially be able to build like an authoritative platform that says like, this is content we're putting out, this is content that essentially we recommend. Just in general, it allows people to filter through a lot more and say, okay, great, like this is stuff that I know I can willingly devote time to because I'm going to get a lot from it, rather than putting a lot of time into something and then later finding out that it didn't really lead anywhere. And like occasionally, without being mean, but occasionally I'll spend some time on YouTube with a couple of the guys at Digital Domain, and like we kind of jokingly go through tutorials, and again, not being mean, but just like we'll watch nuke tutorials and just gonna see what people are doing, and it's just like, dude, like you're doing it wrong, So, but that's the thing is, I would be bummed if I spent 2 hours watching something and then found out that like the way that I'm doing it is like people are gonna mock me.
Yeah, and I've done that. I've been there. Like I think we all have at some point. You get wrapped up and you got to get the information somewhere, so you do that research. But yeah, we are trying to at least cultivate all the best stuff in one place, because the great thing about the ZBrushers out there is they've already been on Twitch doing this on their own. A lot of the representatives we found that are now Pixologic appointed people, they're just ones that we know they know how to properly demonstrate ZBrush to the best of the ability, and they have great artwork. And it's just about taking what they're already kind of doing on their own and bringing it to a place where you can just go and find everything you could ever ask for. Because I can't tell you how many times I've tried to direct people to our YouTube page and then to our Z Classroom page and to all these other different locations, and ultimately it just becomes too much for somebody to even want to spend time searching for.
You guys know, like, at least I know it's more a question for the founders, but did you guys know how big ZBrush was going to be? Like any idea at all, like in the very beginning? And I know
I'm going to pass that one off to Paul.
Yeah, I know, Paul, you've been there for about 8 years, and I know it's a lot older than that. But
yeah, it's about 16 years old. The first version was available in 99.
Shit, I didn't realize that.
SIGGRAPH.
I remember like 2003.
Yeah, SIGGRAPH 2000 is where it really made a splash. But I don't know if he really thought it was going to get as big as it is today. Obviously, I'm sure it was a goal of his. I've never really that's a good question, because I've never really asked him that. I've had conversations about, the history in the past and where we are today and where we've come from. And me, I've been here then for half the inception of Pixologic. So, even myself, when I first joined the company, we were a lot smaller than we are now. So it's interesting to see how much we have grown. But his main goal was, look, there's this thing, a computer, and people want to create art. And I know there's a way people can do it. And I have an idea. And here we go.
Yeah.
And he went off and he made something that, in all fairness, has changed a lot of people's lives. It's changed. I'm sitting here because of some like him.
Yeah. Me too.
I discovered it at SIGGRAPH myself and taught it to myself. And I may not be sitting here probably talking to you if it wasn't for the founders.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to NURBS days, you'd be doing like double rail curves and always like crazy lofts.
Yeah, I did a whole face when you were talking about Maya and old school days. Man, I still remember to this day building a little girl with isoparms in Maya and then lofting and go, what's going on? That doesn't look right. And then you're going back and you're just pulling on a point and you're like, it still doesn't look right.
Oh man,
I got to redraw this one isoparm. No,
dark times.
Yes.
Oh man. Like my very first piece I remember in Maya with my college was I did these bumblebees. And now if I look back at it, if I showed that piece, we would just have a wonderful laugh, because I was literally just taking the shapes, spheres and cubes, and just putting together to make it look like a bumblebee.
Yep.
And at that time, that was like, this is amazing. And like a lot of my friends and stuff were like, oh, holy cow, what were you doing? And then I was just engulfed. I was in the lab every night figuring this out and trying to figure out who invented the word isoparm anyway. Probably not pronouncing it correct.
Everyone thinks they got some clout. It's like, I can say non-uniform rational B-spline and it makes me sound all badass.
Yeah.
It kind of does.
So it's like just that too is just like just throwing shapes and it looked like a bumblebee. And I'm like, this is cool, man. I can
NURBS, who needs
build
them?
something, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's what ZBrush did. It got that technical thing of like, what the heck is UVs? Yeah. I can't tell how many people I still talk to that I help with ZBrush that ask me what UVs is and what's it stand for.
Oh my goodness.
So
oh man,
it still happens. And it's because of our client base. You take toy people.
They don't know what
need
UVs
to are. Some of them,
which I think is the coolest job ever, because you don't have to worry about that stuff. You just sculpt, man. That's all you got to do.
Well, listen, if you ask every time in class, I used to ask, who wants to do UVs?
Yeah.
No one's hands go up. I'm like, see, who wants to do it?
I remember having lunch with Pixar guys, and they were mentioning like, they're working on this new PTEX feature that like they're going to unveil, and it's just like, whoa, wait a minute, like you don't need to unwrap stuff anymore. Like that sounds amazing. Actually, I was hanging out with the Scanline guys like the day before I left, and I was asking them about like how they do all their photoreal buildings for all the destruction shots. So I got a really squeaky chair, by the way. I grabbed the closest chair to me, and it's like the squeakiest one out of all of them.
I don't even hear it.
Okay.
I think you're good.
It's occasionally like I'm drinking water while I'm doing a live session, and I'm like, I swear it's water that I'm pouring. I'm not in the bathroom right now. But yeah, I was talking with them about like thinking that Scanline VFX's workflow for doing these ultra real, amazing photoreal buildings that they then destroy would be this really complex like unwrapping process, and then going through and building, you know, all the curvature maps and world maps and all the other maps that you need to essentially mask everything and do it realistically. And it turns out they're like, oh, we just use like, you know, box UV, you know, because it's so far away you're not going to see any of the stretching, and then throw some, you know, ambient occlusion type blends on the top of it, and it works a charm. And I'm like, wait a minute, like I've been killing myself, like, you know, pretty much like beating up my modelers, saying like, you haven't unwrapped that little window frame over in the corner there, go back and fix it up. And here it is, like guys who are doing on this larger scale, doing it so much more simple. And you know, it works. Like, why overcomplicate everything when you can find a much more intuitive process for it?
Yeah, I think there's like you get this divide where I have so many students that will get, if you tell them like you explain them one particular way to do it, if they don't know any better, if they don't know anything else, they sometimes, a lot of people I think attach themselves to that thing and think that's the way to do it. And it's like, if they don't perfect, I have to teach retopology sometimes, and of course I try and lay down some ground rules, you know, like proper edge looping, direction, flow. But some people would just attach to the exact, like verbatim, the way that I would describe it. And I'm like, no, you kind of have to, like, I'm giving you guidelines here, but you can
please
kind
use
of
that brain still.
Work it. Yeah, use your brain. Don't feel like you're restrained backed into this corner. And it's just so many different ways you could do everything. So, you know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. It's way overused.
Oh man, I haven't heard that one in a long time. Thanks for bringing that back.
You're very welcome. I don't know, how do you replace that? There's more ways to skin man.
I don't know. We could make a millennial version of that.
Yeah, there you go. That's way better.
But yeah, I mean, no, you're absolutely right. And like we kind of touched base on it a little bit earlier, but I do feel when it comes to teaching, for instance, that, you know, people sometimes get used to being told like, okay, give me the solution. I don't want to have to think myself. And the thing is that, like, especially these days with the courses that I do, I really try and imitate real production environments rather than saying, let's do a tutorial. Let's do, you know, here's how to make something. It's more about like, let's go through what we do in real life. And there is a huge problem solving aspect to that. And if you're not learning early on that you need to figure things out, you know, you need to go beyond that, then you're going to get into production and be like, well, Allan said I put in the value of 5.36 and it works. So I did that in this scene and it's completely not working. Why is that? It's like, well, it's, you know, it worked in a very specific protected environment, and that's not how production is. So
totally, it's like, try and use Mental Ray. Try and use Mental Ray. Like, go back to renderers and try and figure out the right settings and do it again. It's like it's always a little different. You got to tweak it, but it's like you have to understand the core inner working, just the basic understanding of how things work first. It's like trying to jump to the end of the sculpt before you blocked out the muscles.
Be in the trenches, you know, and go through the hard yards.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it's just, you know, take your time. That's all I tell people. And, you know, hopefully this new format, like all this stuff in ZBrushLive.com, hopefully that will help a lot of people out there that may be sort of in, you know, lost in the weeds right now, trying to figure out where to go. This is the place to be. And if you want to be a ZBrush artist in all kinds of industries, we pretty much have somebody on there either streaming live on Twitch, people we're talking to on the ZBrush podcast, which, Allan, you'd be a good one to come on the podcast if you're ever back in LA. I guess that's
actually
the big question.
It's kind of funny. Sorry to interrupt. It's kind of funny, but when we initially talked about it, I was going to say like, look, I'll just drive down and hang out. But it was the day before I was moving to Portland, so it was like, this is going to happen. Although I got to say, out of the entire day, it stopped raining for 5 minutes, and it's already raining again. So maybe I'll come see you guys soon. I probably will be back next month for a couple of days. So either way, soon I'd love to come by and check out the place for sure.
Yeah. We would love to talk to you because it seems like you've got all kinds of crazy stories and you're friends with all these people. So that's the kind of stuff we really want to get to know. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, good to know. There's more to it. But so, you know, we're just very excited that we're able to get something like this up. So, you know, ZBrushLive.com, I'll say it one last time. pretty much all you got to do is go there, and everything else is pretty much self-explanatory.
Yeah,
so
I can't wait. I'll definitely be pushing that link around because everyone's going to benefit from it.
Sweet, man. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Thanks again, man. Thanks again, guys, for coming on here. It's been awesome to shoot the shit and talk about this.
Yeah, this is awesome. I like the podcast. This is great. We get to it's nice to be the guest and get to kind of talk about random stuff. It's fun. I like this. All right,
thanks,
cheers.
Allan.
Thanks again.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. Again, thanks to Sol and Paul for joining me and doing that episode. I had a lot of fun doing it. Now, if you want to check out some of the links referenced within this episode, as well as ZBrush Live and everything else that we talked about, you can check out the show notes at www.allanmckay.com/73. So just the numbers 73, as well as information on the It's Art Masterclass. And of course, if you want to check out VFX rates, I highly recommend it. There was actually a cool documentary out this week, if you haven't checked it out, called Hollywood's Greatest Trick, which talks about a pretty common subject that's come up a lot in the last 5 years to do with the inequality of VFX compared to some other film-related industries. Now, I think that it's pretty spot on in terms of the subjects. However, a lot of the subjects in the past, I've kind of avoided a little bit just because I feel like it definitely does put a bit of a negative spin on the industry a lot. And I do agree that it's not as well balanced and as protected and as some of the other industries out there. And I have talked a lot about this more recently and kind of what to expect and also why things are the way that they are. However, I honestly believe you can make a killing in this industry. You can make, a very profitable, secure job within it. However, it all requires you to learn to treat this like a business and to really go in treating yourself like a business rather than as a artist, like a starving artist that comes in expecting to suffer and expecting to be pushed around. Now, the more that you do look at yourself as a business and treat yourself like that, the less likely you're going to get taken advantage of. Now, everything is a stepping stone, and I do feel like some of the scars or the wounds that you lick at the beginning of your career definitely do make you, and, we can't always have the perfect, safe career, but I do think that knowing what you're worth and knowing how to be strategic in how you approach everything is very critical. Now, I did design the website vfxrates.com, so one word, VFX Rates. It'll be in the show notes, with the intention of having a go-to diagnostic tool to allow you to put in a lot of the more critical information that will give you back a base figure of how much you should charge. And it's more there so that way you get a pretty good understanding of what you're worth or what you roughly should be charging given your situation. This is definitely something that I want to flesh out over time and really contribute a lot more into it to kind of give it legs in terms of really growing it into a much more in-depth tool. But for me, the main goal of this is not only to figure out what you're worth and how much you should charge as a freelancer wherever you are in the world, but also how to go the extra step. How do you earn more? If you're able to get $50 an hour, how do you get $60 an hour? Or what if you hit your cap? If you get to around $100 an hour, you're probably not going to be able to charge that necessarily. So what's the next stepping point in this? It means that you need to learn to either bid yourself out or approach things a little bit differently to the standard approach. So wherever you are in your career, this is definitely something where I want to give you the keys to get what you're worth. And like I said, the ultimate goal is really to showcase where you're currently at, but what the next step is. And that's where I want to interject a lot of additional information to really kind of guide us and help us not get taken advantage of and really have that stronger mindset coming into knowing what we're worth and how to go for our goals and how to get them. So check out vfxrates.com, find out what your hourly freelance rate is. And that is it for this episode. I'll be back next episode with Joaquin Baldwin, an animation supervisor for Disney, who has had multiple successes with his short films, and talking about going straight from animation school right into going to Disney, and essentially the kind of path of being an animator and going into more the director field. So this is definitely a big subject that I think will be really great to cover. We go through so much. Definitely one of my favorite episodes to date, and I'm really looking forward to this one. So check it out next week, and I'll talk to you soon. Rock on.